the aesthetic experience with the word. My name is Jacinta, your host. And once again, I am humbled and honored to be here in the studio with
Simeon Lakuch,
Faith Achen, Joy Chanel Achen.
Ah, you had a chance. a chance. Okay, whatever that story is. In our last lesson, we talked about how to break down the problem-solving process into key steps, scalable steps. And now we're turning these scalable steps into a module, an actual module. So maybe one of us should be a mentor, and the three of us should be students.
All right. I see you're looking in my direction.
Yeah. I think Simeon should be the one to take us through his problem-solving process.
Yes.
Yeah?
So, from the last time, we talked about what the different steps are that you can take to solving a problem.
Yeah.
We talked about creating a roadmap.
Yeah.
That is like the skeleton that you add flesh to. So now, with that roadmap in place, with that skeleton is so good because you can build so many things on it. Not only are you building the steps, but you can build modules that you can teach other people how to solve their problems. And first, I want to go through how to even create that module.
Okay.
And creating that module is simpler than it sounds. You know, modules sound really complicated because it's a technical term for what we use in school in different education systems.
What were you using in school?
University. Modules, yes. Modules, yeah.
Ah, okay.
So
what should we use?
No,
it's very fine.
It's fine. Okay. It just sounds very technical. That's what I'm saying. Someone thinks that it's so complicated when a module is initially just a solution.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
Broken down into actual learning points.
Yes.
And decision points. So you have learning points. Learning points are the areas that you want someone to take away. So if, let's say, you started off with identifying the problem, what do you want someone to learn in that module of identifying the problem? You want them to learn how to identify the problem, what it takes to identify the problem, and then a decision point is the next part of a module where you highlight what step they can take, and also a metric by which they should judge whether or not they're doing it well. So a good metric in decision point is if the problem isn't well defined, it has to be well defined. Someone should be able to understand what the problem is in layman's language. Like if the problem is maybe I can still go back to my model. My model. If the problem is structure, I need to be able to explain that creatives lack structure in their everyday work and in everything that they do that allows them to further their careers.
Okay.
And that's a defined problem. Whereas if I just put the problem as structure, that's vague. It could mean so many things. Structure could be in financial structure. Here I'm talking about like everyday career structure instead of. So when you actually zero down on what the problem is, then finding a solution is easier. So in this module, that's how you measure, whether it's actually a module, because someone needs to be able to apply what exactly they're hearing and say, okay, I can test myself, test what I've written down and test the problem I've gotten. Like, is it well defined? Check with other people, find out when you look at this problem, is it a clearly defined problem? Does it make sense? Or, you help judge yourself by that metric, and then you go on to revisit the patterns that you saw and see if it's in line with that description. Yeah, because when we're finding our problems, we saw patterns.
Yes.
We saw things that were recurring. We saw trends that were not okay. Like now you find out that people are unable to sustain their careers. That's a pattern you've seen in different people's lives, in different areas you've seen. It's just a pattern, lack of sustainability. Or like you say, you find a pattern of people in different industries that are depressed. You find it's just a pattern of they have failing because of anxiety and depression and they're not moving forward. You need to make sure that your definition of the problem matches that pattern. And that's an easy way to build a model.
Yeah.
A module rather. And then you go like that with everything.
Yeah.
First, define it properly even when you're setting clear objectives. I like using the SMART technique of setting goals and objectives where it's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Making sure you go through that metric and say, okay, because that's the same thing as defining. You're defining the objectives. When defining them just means that you're passing them through those filters to see if does this actually make sense? Is it actually a workable thing, or am I just in the clouds? You need to bring yourself down. So that's basically a repeatable process you can use for every step of yours to bring your steps, because we all have our different steps, our different roadmaps, but turning them into modules just means that you need to be able to define it, you need to be able to pinpoint what you want someone to learn from it, and then thirdly, we need to create a decision point, a point where there will be like, if this is not, if it's not like this, then it's not a good module.
Yeah.
If it's not well defined, then it's not a good module. If it's not clear, it's not a good module. If it's not, check it by that.
Yeah. It doesn't have impact.
If it does, if that has impact, it's not a good. It's not a good. No, and that's what defines what a module is, because it has to be
value-driven, right?
Very value-driven. It has to be able to leave someone with something. You don't want someone to do a module and they're like, what was that? I could have gotten that information. Yeah, what were we learning? But you have to be able to. A decision point is really the application point where they can apply. Okay, I can apply this by saying, okay, if I use this metric, if I judge it against this standard, then I can be like, okay, I've learned. That's why we have exams. You know, that's the same thing you will do with your module as a mentor. Is that you'll be able to test someone and be like, is it well defined? Is that well defined according to these metrics? Is that even when you're setting objectives using the SMART method? Is it achievable? Is it relevant? Is it time bound? Have you put a time frame on it? Things like that. Having those measures is what makes a model. A module. Having those measures is what makes a module.
Yes, the module. Wow.
I think hearing this it makes me excited to see your module, because I can trust that as RINT, like when I as let's say a mentee or an apprentice, when I log onto your mentorship, I'll see the modules well defined, and then I'll know when I read the overview, I know I'm going to get the gist of the matter, because everything is well defined and well structured.
Yes, and you understand what you're supposed to go home with.
Yes. And at the end of the day, I can be like, okay, that maybe the title of module 1 was this, and I have actually learned from what module 1 is saying. I have gotten what it's saying, and
Well, that would lead me to the question of how can you describe your growth curve as you've been learning from the start to date?
I'll
Maybe
say
give an example.
that basically describes what RINT has been doing currently, because I believe you created modules for us from the beginning, from how we began. I would give an example of, let's say, let me go back to the start, how your first module was identifying the problems that people come to us with. And I would say when I first attended the RINT meeting, I didn't really think people came to me for solutions. Like when you asked, I remember that day when you were asking people, I was like, please don't pick me. and funny how whenever you said, please don't pick me,
Holy Spirit, that's the one.
And they bring the microphone and they ask me a question. I'm like, I have to say something. But I would say I have really grown from then to now, because when I look at myself back then, and I can see a big change, because you really stretched. I would say you really stretched me. It kept those questions ringing in my head. Okay, what is my purpose? What am I here for? And you'd always encourage us and tell us these are things that are within you. Search for, why do people come to you? And I would say my journey actually started by asking people. I asked my sisters, I asked my friends, have I solved any problems for you? And if I haven't, what would you
come to me for?
Then And the interesting thing about God is, because it was something I was praying about. When you ask Him, He will answer.
Yeah.
So He brought opportunities to me, and I remember I think telling you this story of how I was talking with some lady I was advising her about her daughter and just telling her like things she can do so that her daughter stays busy, stays productive. And she was like, "Do you know you are a very good teacher? You should be preaching the word." And I laughed because I feel like it's teaching something I've been running away from. My dad is a teacher. I have a sister who is a teacher, so I was like, nah. And another, I kept getting actually confirmations, and then I realized it was something I had had before, but I wasn't really spiritually alert. I wasn't really discerning. I had something about talking to people. I think you had a statement of the hard hearts of men, something of that sort. And I just brushed it off and I kept asking God. You know, God answered. I kept asking, but what is my purpose? I feel like there's so many things that I can do. I like fashion, I like clothes, I can dance, but it was never really, I wouldn't say it's like my niche. Like when you were asking people, what's your niche? I would say, okay, I feel like I'm a master of a jack of all trades, master of none. So when I would say RINT actually stretched me to the point of where I got intention. Now I was hearing. You know, sometimes you ask a question but you don't listen for the answer. So now I was listening for that answer, and then the confirmations came, and that's how I got to know. So I would say with RINT, it's progressive learning because you have to first go through point A in order to go to point B, in order to go to point C, meaning you won't skip a step.
And they're all related.
Yes, you won't skip a step because you know in order to reach point, in order to grow, I have to first feel this. Yes, I have to first feel this step, and it shows what we are doing here is not just something for we are using our own individuality, our uniqueness, the uniqueness that God has created us with. Because the world will try to impact you like outward, try to make you conform to its ways, do things, so you'll be in a copy and paste thing. Okay, so let's say in the fashion industry, we've been talking about the fashion industry. Someone is maybe doing this trend, so let me follow this trend. While here it's coming from
something that's competitive, actually.
While here it's coming from within. You're using what you are given. Okay, so he's a creative, he's using the creative gift in him. She's a counselor, she's using that counseling gift in her. Let's say a teacher, I'm using that. It's different, and at the same time it joins. Because let's say if I am maybe teaching a creative and I need someone to help, you're available. So it's progressive, and at the same time we are growing together. It's like a whole. RINT is like a whole.
It's like a body.
Yes.
Actually, I remember one of the partners talking about this is a body, and the body of Christ is like the head, the arms, the legs, the stomach. So it's like we feed into each other. We don't compete, but we feed into each other. We entirely depend on the source, but we have to. You feed me, I feed you. My apprentices would need your help. Your apprentices would need my help. You would have somebody that you would make reference to if you need something. That's what I see, and that's a very good point that you have brought out there.
I feel like if he's dealing with a creative that needs counseling, he can also I can refer you to someone. So it's like we build each other.
Wow, that's a very beautiful growth curve that actually brings out even more than I was thinking about.
And what I've actually learned from just listening to her is when you actually decide that, Lord, I want to know my purpose, I want to know why you created me, and you decide that I need to just sit down and understand who I am. God is always faithful. He will always find a way of bringing people or just aligning you to a way that He will answer you, and you will know there is, many times people think that, why am I here? Like they think that the answer is so far fetched. Like it's very hard to find that the purpose they were created for. But I feel like it's something God is always faithful, because He's only created you, and He wants you to know why you're here on earth. So the moment you start asking those questions, He will definitely answer.
And there's a scripture that says it's in the glory of God to conceal things and the honor of kings to search them out. So everybody has to go through that navigation pathway and find out who they are, and a pathway that not even no foal has trodden on. So that's something that someone may think that, okay, now you've discovered, now what is my purpose? You have to put in the work. You must take the initiative. You must step into the spaces even when you don't know anything. It takes that boldness to say, you know what, I'm going to do this. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't even know how this is going to turn out. I don't think I have the brains. Most of the times we talk ourselves down.
Like you give reasons why it cannot happen. More than what.
Actually, that leads me to the question: what are those struggles that you have experienced as you have gone through this journey from the time you started learning?
Okay. So the struggles are more like challenges for me, because generally I get comfortable in my own skin, and when someone is trying to stretch me out, I'm like, I'm like, okay, I don't want to think so much.
I'll snap.
I want to do things my own time. Not when someone has told me, okay, what is this? Think. But I guess God is actually trying to teach me that my timing is different from yours. You get. Like you may think, oh, okay, you want that process, but I can just throw you in there to grow you. It doesn't have to be the way you think. So it has really been like a learning process also. Like I have to come out of my shell, let me say. And I always need to be like, God, help me. Help me grow. Help me. And sometimes I'm like, but I don't want to do it. Then sometimes I'm like, but is this what I'm supposed to do? But God's like, yes, this is what you're supposed to do. So the struggle has always been, coming out of my comfort zone. And being stretching beyond my limit. It has been a struggle, but it has been working because of also persistence. Yes.
Myron Golden actually says, your time has to come, whether you like it or not.
Yes.
So, what happens? It will either find you not prepared and it will expose you, or that will be the time for your revealing. I hope I've said it exactly how he says it, because he talks about prepare yourself, because you do not know God's timing. You may have your timing, but God's timing is different. And we always say, I want a breakthrough,
But when the breakthrough comes, you're like,
huh? The problem about being laid back, because I also face that sometimes, you end up doing nothing. You're like, you know what? You keep thinking about something. Like sometimes I'll think about something, and then I'm like, you know what? Let it play out. And then when you leave it to play out, like I'll be that person who, let's say in class, when they ask a question, I may know the answer, but I'll be like, unless they pick me.
Okay, and for me, I've always shied away. Like there are times I really know things, but I don't like. I think it's being shy. Fear. Fear is such a and also sometimes because I used to fear a lot. So it has kept me from even being, out there flourishing.
And this is an environment that gives you that environment to flourish,
because it's participatory. Everyone, you'll be like, Simeon.
Joey, what do you think? So you have to come prepared for the session, and you have to come prepared to think.
And to plan. For me, there's a scripture that I've been using recently, Proverbs 21:5, which says, "The plans of the diligent lead to prosperity." Because that just means that your diligence in the plan that you're done,
Yeah.
you surrender that to God, and God does something with that.
Yeah.
And that's why then the last session we had, I said RINT is initiative. It's just, it takes initiative.
Yes.
Put that plan into action,
Yeah.
and then God sees your diligence and your
Yes.
consistency.
Yes. Step into the unknown spaces,
Yeah.
and He will only increase on something.
Yes.
He will not increase on nothing.
Speaking of increasing on something, you know, like how I feel like me, and I'm sure there are also people who feel like that. How you feel like what you have is too small, so you're like, this is so small. I don't think God can use this. Yet when you're faithful, when you're faithful with little, He increases. I'm sure, like for example, in your journey, I'm sure there are things which you hadn't discovered initially, but when you started working on the thing you discovered first, you started to grow. Other gifts started to show, to manifest themselves. Other things started to.
Honestly, let me tell you a story. I was a businesswoman. Working, I knew how to make money. That was the story I knew. Come to you and negotiate for this and that contracts.
Yeah.
I was doing food, contract catering. I had a restaurant. That's all I knew. I didn't think about these things of cameras and all. So imagine, God tells me, walk away, I walk away. And as I go through this training, He never once told me that I'm going to be in front of a camera. Had He told me, I would say, no, okay, now this one, the journey is ending.
Yes.
Because I know how to make money. I know how to do this. I know how to do this. And then, are you the manufacturer of yourself?
Yeah.
Did you actually create yourself?
Yeah.
So He can humble you.
And people, I see people, once they build themselves and they get skills, especially, you tend to depend on yourself. You think you're self-made. I'm the one who can do this. And then you tend to push God away. So sometimes God has to be like,
that business had actually become an idol. So when I started doing this, I started from scratch.
Where you have to depend on the Holy Spirit all the time.
First of all, for everything, including the content, including the modules, including what next, including who, my goodness, and including the camera. Jesus Christ. I couldn't even introduce myself. But this is something I had to step into the unknown spaces. And I had to do this. Now here we are in a studio. And I didn't even think that. Actually, it's so amazing how God places a lot in us, and we talk ourselves down when we actually have a lot of wisdom to share, a lot of experiences, because this is about your experiences. It is about the challenges that you have been going through. And you never know what you have been experiencing until you sit down because the challenges you guys have discussed earlier before we started recording, you're like, how old are you? Are you 50? And all these challenges, you are showing us that this is what I encountered, and this is how I countered, this is how I overcame this challenge. And then this is what we're structuring into a scalable model. Yeah.
So that
others can also
learn from my experience.
Yes.
You don't need to learn from your own experience.
No.
But many people like learning.
You want to fast fall in the hole. You want to fast fall in the hole. And then you start and you say, oh, I've fallen in the hole. And I could have told you that because I came out of it.
Yes. Reduce on the holes, basically. By kind of like learning from other people. How they solved this, how they did this. So this is a call to those who have been going through so many challenges. Those challenges didn't come to you for nothing. They come to you for a purpose. So that you can those problems that you have solved are a lesson for somebody else, not for you. That's why they say purpose is never for you. It's for somebody else. Your gift is not for you. It's for somebody else. And that brings us to the end of this session. Yes. So much fun that we don't even want to leave, but to go. So we look forward to the next session. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye.